Truck driver helps an elderly man, boss fires him for being late, 48 hours later bikers show up. The highway stretched endlessly ahead, the sun dipping low behind a sea of golden fields. Jake Carter, a long-haul truck driver with over 20 years on the road, drummed his fingers on the wheel, humming along to an old Johnny Cash tune. Deadlines were tight, and his boss, Frank Miller, wasn't the forgiving type. "No excuses, Carter," Frank always barked. "Deliver on time, or don't bother coming back." But as Jake neared a desolate stretch of Route 89, something caught his eye, a rusted-out Buick Riviera, its hood popped, steam hissing from the radiator. Beside it, an elderly man stood, his frail hands gripping a tattered map. The setting sun cast long shadows over his weary face. Jake sighed, glancing at the clock. He had no time. But something in the old man's defeated stance pulled at his heart. With a quick check of his mirrors, he eased the 18-wheeler onto the gravel shoulder and hopped out. "Need a hand, sir?" Jake asked. The old man, Walter, looked up, eyes filled with both surprise and gratitude. "Son, you have no idea. I've been standing here for hours. No one even slowed down." Walter explained that he was on his way to see his daughter, whom he hadn't seen in over a decade. His wife had recently passed, and he was all alone now. "I wanted to make amends," Walter said, voice trembling. But this old car had other plans. Jake knew he was already running late. But looking at Walter, stranded and heartbroken, he made a decision, one that would cost him more than he realized. "Hop in, old-timer. I'll get you there." Walter hesitated. "But your job." "Some things matter more than a paycheck," Jake said with a small smile. For the next 4 hours, Jake and Walter shared stories, about the road, about love, about regrets. When Jake finally pulled into a quiet suburban neighborhood, a woman in her 40s sprinted from the porch, tears streaming down her face. "Dad," she sobbed, embracing Walter tightly. Jake watched from the truck, heart swelling. Walter turned back, his eyes glistening. "I owe you, son. More than you know." With a final nod, Jake pulled back onto the road, his heart full, but his troubles just beginning. The consequences. By the time Jake reached the warehouse, it was nearly sunrise. Frank was waiting, arms crossed, a storm brewing in his eyes. 48 hours late, Carter, he growled. "You're fired." Jake felt the blow deep in his gut. Years of loyalty, gone in a heartbeat. No chance to explain, no room for compassion. With nothing left to say, Jake gathered his things, turned in his keys, and walked out. He didn't regret helping Walter, but now, he had no job, no paycheck, and no idea what came next. For 2 days, he sat in his small apartment, staring at the walls, his phone silent. Then, on the morning of the 3rd day, the roar of motorcycles shattered the quiet. The bikers show up. Jake stepped onto his porch to find a group of 20 bikers, their leather jackets adorned with a single emblem, the Iron Brotherhood. At the front stood a familiar face, Walter, looking decades younger in his biker vest. "Morning, son," Walter said, grinning. Jake blinked. "Walter? What's going on?" Walter chuckled. "You didn't just help an old man, Jake. You helped the founder of this club. And we don't forget kindness." The tallest biker stepped forward. "Frank Miller blacklisted you from trucking jobs. We made some calls. You start a new gig tomorrow, better pay, better people. And if Frank gives you any trouble." He patted his jacket, where a heavy chain hung from his belt. "Well, we'll have a little chat with him." Jake exhaled, a laugh bubbling up in his chest. He'd lost a job, but he'd gained something far greater, a family. As the bikers roared away, Walter turned back. "One act of kindness changed my life, Jake. Now it's our turn to change yours." Jake watched them go, feeling something he hadn't in a long time, hope. And for the first time in years, he knew he'd be okay. The message. Sometimes, the right thing costs us more than we can afford, but the universe has a way of paying us back in ways we never expect. Kindness is never wasted.